understanding what communication process is. Before that, let me make you understand that good communication is so often it makes a difference between hired and fired, because a well articulated communication, whether it is oral or written, it makes hell of a difference in your position in an organization or in society or in relationships. By improving your communication skills, you not only help yourself, but also the entire organization, and throughout your life, you will not face any difficulty as far as the success is concerned. That's because you form a link between you and your organization and your clientele, and that makes you to have ability to receive, to evaluate, to use and pass on information in a very effective manner. And you can become a very effective manager once you articulate well, or once you possess this business communication skill well. Now, communication per se can also help you in boosting your employee morale or employee image in organization. By keeping employees informed about what is going on, what is involving in decision making, what kind of feedback you are getting from your customers, your consumers, etc., you can calibrate and you can take your decisions according to the feedback you received through effective communication. And this makes you a very important cog in the wheel of organizational communication skills. Now, we'll just, as a formality, we'll try to understand what communication refers to. And it's nothing but, it is a reciprocal exchange of information, ideas, facts, opinions, beliefs, feelings, emotions, attitudes, and these are expressed or articulated through verbal or non-verbal means between either two people or within a group of people in any organization. So communication is a process by which information is passed between individuals and or organizations by means of previously agreed symbols. What is the communication refers to? Now, any act by which one person gives to or receives from another person information about that person's needs, that person's desires, that perceptions, knowledge, wisdom, and or any affective state, that communication may be could be intentional or it could be completely unintentional and may involve either conventional or unconventional signals, and that may take either linguistic form or non-linguistic form and may occur through spoken words or through other modes. So in this one complete big long sentence, everything about the business communication or everything about the communication has been described by Julia. So what happens is how this particular process takes place, how this business communication process takes place, that is very worth understanding. So effective communication makes you a productive relationship. That means in any field, whether in family, in interpersonal relationships, or in a relationship between your creditors, investors, consumers, customers, and you, everywhere the effective communication is always a productive relationship. Without effective communication, probably it is very difficult for you to establish productive relationship. We communicate for what? we communicate for getting information. Are you understanding? We communicate for getting information. We also communicate to motivate. To whom? To motivate your colleagues, to your teammates, to your customers, to your investors, creditors, everybody. Once we motivate them, then they fall in line with your intentions, and you will be able to take a better decision once they fall in line with your motivated intentions. This intention could be selling your product. This intention could be attracting investment from them. This motivation could be making them produce a good quality product or collaborate with you. There are various skills which you can exploit through your effective communication, which is meant for motivating others. Then it is very important in the process of learning effective communication that you must also learn how to appreciate things, how to praise everybody in the process, in the entire process, so that they are in tune with your successful or effective communication. Praising doesn't mean a false praise or something like that, but praising means you appreciate every positive aspect of that particular person, and not only appreciate, but also make him understand that you have appreciated that particular aspect of that his personality. Now, once you are in the mode of getting information, based on the information you motivated the persons, then you appreciated the persons, and after the appreciation, what you want is to get feedback from them. And there is a little difference between getting advice and getting feedback. Feedback actually makes you to re-strategize your communication strategy, and based on the feedback, you can make necessary changes in your communication, and probably you can make your communication better and better. Every time you get a feedback, you analyze that feedback, and based on that feedback, you get your selling intentions fulfilled. We communicate to sell ourselves. And when I say sell ourselves, you can sell your own resume, you can sell your personality, you can sell your entire products, you can sell anything. And for selling, good communication or effective communication is a must. Without effective communication, you cannot sell anything. You cannot sell yourself to the organization. You cannot put across or articulate your personality in any relationship. You cannot get your customer or your consumer buy that product. Without this effective communication, it is not possible to sell your product or your relationship or your personality. So last but not the least, communication also indulge in for greeting others, for inviting others, for taking others into your fold, into your realm of world. Once you greet them, once you invite them, once you welcome them into your realm of world, then probably it is very easy for you to not only motivate them, not only get information from them, not only get feedback from them, not only sell them your product or your relationship, but everything is possible once you invite, greet, welcome them into your fold. Okay. So once we understand that business communication is all about motivating people, all about persuading people, all about selling your product or your personality or your relationship, once we understand this mechanism, once you understand this, what for we are indulging into business communication, we have to understand the entire process of communication, what actually makes communication effective. Now, what are the elements in this communication process? It is very simple to understand, and by this time you must have received a lot of knowledge and data about how the effective communication takes place. In the communication process, what we need is a source or a sender who actually transmit message. Then we receive somebody, some audience or some receiver, some person who receives that message. Then you also need what is the purpose or what is the goal of your communication. What for you are communicating? Are you communicating for establishing your relationship? Are you communicating to put across your personality in an interview or to the organization for getting hired? Or you are communicating with that particular person for selling your product or marketing your product, or you are doing this communication for getting a feedback from your customer or from your consumer, that how they evaluate your product or how they liked or disliked your product. All getting this feedback or getting this information is can be your most important purpose. Similarly, it also depends on the environment or the context in which the communication is taking place. It will depend on if you are in interview, you are having a different purpose and goal. If you are a manager who is selling certain very important goods, then your context or environment is different. And depending upon the context or environment, the designing of your message or content will be different. So, message or the content cannot remain same for everything. It has to be different. And depending upon the context and environment only, depending upon your audience only, depending upon your receiver only, your message designing will take place. And this is very important part of communication, that how you design your message and how you put that message into proper medium or proper channel. Because if you want to use a particular message and that message is not in a proper medium or in a proper channel, then the effectiveness of that message will be completely lost in the process. For example, if you want to say to your all employees that in front of a particular building, these employees should not indulge in smoking. And if you write down an email that all employees, please note that in front of building number B2104, nobody should smoke. Now that particular message has gone. It has gone off the ear. Why? Because you have written an email for that. What you have done is you have completely chosen a very idiotic medium or idiotic channel for putting across that particular message. So the message should have been a big poster with a skull, with two cigarette butts crossing each other, and written there in a very bold red letters, no smoking here, explosive store. So that means choosing of medium or choosing of channel for your designed message is very important. Whatever great message you must have written, whatever great content it must have had, but if it is wrongly put across through wrong medium or wrong channel, that will not have any effectiveness at all, or effective communication will not take place at all. Another very important ingredient or element of effective communication is you must receive a feedback about whether that communication has really achieved its purpose or really has been put across rightly to that particular person or audience or not. Once you get a feedback, then only it is considered that the communication has taken place. Until and unless you get a feedback of that communication, whether they understood or not, whether they appreciated or not, whether they liked it or not, or whether they disliked it, or what is the position, depending upon what kind of feedback you get from that particular aspect, the element, your effectiveness of communication will depend upon. Okay, so the whole description which I have done up till now can be represented in this particular diagram, where there is a source, then source creates a message is encoded, the encoded message is put through a channel or a media, and through that channel or media, that message is passed on. The message is decoded by the receiver. Receiver decodes that message. Depending upon the understanding of that message or comprehension of that message, he gives the feedback to the source, whether he liked it or not. Now, the feedback need not be always in the form of report or in message or something like that. Feedback means, suppose your intention is to tell somebody that you do this job, and if that person, after receiving your message, he does that action or he does that job, that means your feedback is positive. That means he has understood your message and he has acted according to your message, according to your requirement. Okay, so this diagram very in a very succinct way, it indicates how the communication process takes place and what are the requirements of the effective communication process. Okay, so now what are the strengths and weaknesses of these communications, and how this communication process depends on verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Although you can express many things non-verbally, you can express your love, you can express your appreciation, you can express many things non-verbally, but there are a lot of limits to your non-verbal communication, and to what extent you can really communicate in a better manner, it all depends on your help of a language. And verbal communication is all about language. Okay, if you want to discuss ideas, if you want to discuss abstract things, if you want to discuss certain thought processes, verbal communication consists of language, that is words, which are very important element of that particular communication, and they are arranged. Those are words which are arranged in a very meaningful pattern. Just simply arrangement of the word will not make your communication great. You may use high sounding mumbo jumbo words, but it may not be of any use at all. And therefore, these meaningful words with meaningful pattern is what we are supposed to do in putting across your communication. Okay, so what is the strength of verbal communication? The most important strength of verbal communication is when you are speaking to somebody, you get immediate feedback and immediate action you can monitor or you can find out. And in that speaking, you can take advantage of the role of your body language, that how with emotions and sentiments you can give weightage to your words with lot of emotion and sentiments. This is very important because while speaking, when you put a certain kind of emotions into that particular word, then the whole communication becomes extremely effective, and people get inspired, people get motivated, and people are forced to take action or forced to work according to the message which they have received. And then but what happens is verbal communication not possible to give a very long list of directions. That is the weakness in verbal communication, and therefore you need to write emails, you need to write reports, you need to write summaries of action required to be taken. You have to create SOPs, checklists, and these are long processes or long list of directions or instructions which you can give, which may not be possible when you are just giving a lecture or giving during a particular meeting. You are taking certain time in processing that information. So that is the weakness of verbal communication. Orally, when you are indulging in oral communication, you can probably make it very effective by putting your body language, your gestures, postures, everything together along with the words. But the limitation is that it may not be possible for a very long direction. Now, in written communication, there is a great deal of advantage. And what is that advantage? The advantage is that the written communication not only it's out into the black and white, and there's a proof that you have communicated like this. Nobody will be able to take out your letter, signed letter, or your email, or your checklist, or your guidance, or your SOP from that gamut of communication. But it will give a proof to everybody that you communicated this. These were your intentions. These were the actions required to be taken, and nobody can get away with those particular actions, which is not so in verbal communication. In verbal communication, sometimes depending upon the span of attention, it may not be possible that they will behave exactly the way you want, or they will take action exactly the way you want. So only problem in written communication is that although it is a proof of communication, although it has got tremendous power to convey, but written words does not show a person's actual feelings, and it will require a great deal of practice, a great deal of strength, a great deal of acquired skill to put your emotions into the words. It is possible. It is possible to put impactful words into your communication. It is possible. But it will take a lot of time for you to develop this skill, because nobody is, born with this skill, and everybody has to make a lot of effort in putting sentiments, in putting emotions into the words, and arrange those words in such a feeling that the other person receives it with the same fervor, with the same flavor and fervor, those particular words. But by and large, it may not be possible to actually convey or actually transmit your actual feelings about that particular intention in the thing. So it also will depend on in the context in which your communication is taking place. For example, there are various cultures. There are corporate ethos, corporate cultures, national, international, regional cultures. Then the language may be different. Language is so subtle in its nature and understanding that the kind of English which is spoken in one part of the United States may not be same as the second part of the United States. Leave aside the word, but even in the country, you will find a different kind of tonality, words, language, very different. So it will depend on language, whether that language is understandable or not understandable. It will also depend on where your communication is taking place. What is the location of your communication? That whether it is restaurant, whether it is office, auditorium, room, whatever. And most importantly, it will also depend on the situation in which the communication process is going on. So overall, these are the ways where the internal communication in any organization takes place. There are horizontal communications. There are upward communication where the employees give suggestions for improvement. Then employees also solve their disputes through upward communication. Then there are performance reports. Then in downward communication, there are job instructions, plans, policies, SOP, checklists, procedures, rules, etc. are passed on. Then in horizontal communication, problem solving takes place with each of the departments. Then comes the very important aspect of non-verbal communication. The non-verbal communication is nothing but a study of communication in which how your vocal cues and spatial relationships are developed or understood. Your physical behavior, your gestures, your posture, your tonality of the words, your pronunciation, renunciation, everything, your intonation, all those things give a lot of clue. We are going to study this non-verbal communication in detail in one of our next modules. Okay. So non-verbal communication in organization depends on environment, your body placement, your posture, your gesture, your facial expressions, your movement while you are addressing, your dress, your appearance, your clothing, everything. All these aspects will shape your effectiveness of your non-verbal communication. Okay. In the non-verbal communication, you have got kinesics. The word kinesics comes from the root word of kinesis, which means movement and refers to the study of hand, arm, body and face movement. And specifically, this section will outline the use of gestures, head movements, the way your eye contact goes, whether your facial expressions are really conveying the communication or not, all those aspects. Then facial expressions can be of happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, surprise, fear, etc. And how we behave with each other with gestures. Gestures also can communicate very effectively, as effectively as words, and sometimes even gestures can communicate better. Gestures support the verbal communication. Suppose you want somebody to convey that you love so much that particular person, and if you hug him, kiss him or hug him, then your gesture of hugging him is far more effective than just saying I love you. Okay, depending upon what words communicate, even better than that, sometimes your gestures and facial expressions and your eyes communicate. So there are certain things we have to avoid while using non-verbal communication, that pointing at people or fiddling with your items while giving interview, or while conducting some meeting, or dragging your feet with complete lethargy while speaking or addressing the meeting, then your head down while attending the meeting, or dropping your shoulders with lethargy. All those all those gestures or all those positions, they convey a very negative thing to the other person. You have to also understand that weak handshake, very shifting eyes from one place to another, arms crossed on the chest, hands in pockets, covering your mouth, shaking your feet constantly. All these are negative gestures, and they convey a very negative thing to the others. You have to also understand certain body postures as they are shown on your screen. The body posture can be open or closed. They can lean forward, lean backward, depending upon hand held state of signals, neutral attitude, negative judgments. These are all indicators, and these indicators give a lot of cue about your communication, like rigid body posture, hunched shoulders, crossed arms. These are all negative things. Another very important aspect in communication, other than the verbal and non-verbal communication, is why communication doesn't become effective, because there are certain barriers when we communicate. These barriers could be semantics. Semantics means barrier because the language or the words are not understood by the other person, or you are using some very unfamiliar words which other person has never come across, and immediately he is not able to make out what is the meaning of that particular word, and one or two words meaning is not understood, the communication goes for a bust. So poor semantics, poor choice of channel. I already explained to you that if channel is not proper, then it can become a barrier to your communication. Then there could be noise, there could be physical problems, that mic is not working, microphone is not working, your camera is not working, there are physical distractions while speaking. Lot of things can happen which are physical in aspect. Then there can be a difference between status in your organization. While you are a small employee in organization and you are talking to your CEO, then that becomes a very great barrier, and you are not able to effectively communicate because you are having a lower status than the person with whom you are communicating. Then sometimes the barrier of communication is because of your emotions. you are completely emotionally out, and in that emotional state, if somebody is communicating with you, you may not be at par or at status with his emotions or his sentiments, and it may be contradictory, and you may not get a proper message, or you may not give proper feedback to other person. It also depends on the perceptions, that whether this particular person who is speaking to you, whether he is good person, bad person, depending upon how you evaluate that person. So in that situation, certain filtering takes place, and we try to ignore certain things, despite the fact that he's talking a good thing. We ignore them, we screen them, filter them, and that is how we evaluate the source. Then what happens is, in absence of a feedback, we don't communicate effectively, because our feedback is not good. We get a poor feedback, then it affects greatly our ability to communicate. Then sometimes so much of information and so much of data is passed on in an email or in a letter or in SOP, that it takes a lot of time for analytical thinking of that data or analysis of that data, and that data becomes complete overload and you cannot communicate at all. Then also we are not very good at listening skills. We are going to deal with listening skills in one of our future things. Now, how we are going to overcome this? These were some of the barriers, or these were some of the hurdles or bumps, you can say, on your road to effective communication. How to avoid these bumps? How to avoid these barriers? And to overcome these barriers, you have to do some practice. And what is that practice? First is, you have to learn how to use and how to read feedbacks well. Second, be sensitive to the receiver's point of view and not your own point of view. Try to understand receiver's point of view, how he is going to feel, how he is going to receive, how he is going to emotionally get connected with that communication which you are trying to undertake or transmit. Then whenever you listen, please listen to understand that communication. Just don't hear, listen to understand. How listening skills can be improved, we are going to deal with it in our subsequent modules. Then use direct, simple language, or at least use language which is appropriate to the level of the receiver or the audience. Do not use very high sounding jargon filled with lot of professional words and things, etc. That poor chap should understand it. What the hell is going on? Okay, so that's why it is very important for you to use simple language, not very complicated sentences and all, and not very complex language. Use proper channel. Learn to use channels well, and this is very important aspect. And also, last but not the least, learn to use supportive communication, not defensive communication. Supportive communication means look directly into the eyes of a person, or in your written communication, greet that person in such a way, or make a beginning in such a way that he evokes interest in your reading the further part of your communication, and which is possible by practice. You can do all these particular aspects.